what are your first comments if you listening about this guy?
Well, I agree with him pretty much almost entirely, I think. Because that was my first thought also, that public health is the most important, because human displacement is very important, and that will affect public health, especially when people start getting crammed together with less space. And the economy is, of course, if you can't afford the things that you need and can't produce the things you need, people might start dying anyways. But immediate public health, I think, would be the most important concern, because while you can focus on those other things long term, in the short term, the elderly and the young, I think, anyone that's more infirm than a normal, healthy adult is going to be in danger of the changes in the climate and the changes in the situation. So and you can wait on the other things, but you can't wait with public health, because people will start dying if these things are.
Are things going to become sufficiently different, like climatologically? I don't even know. With the global warming, are things going to become different enough to be essentially something that people have not experienced before? Like the amount of radiation, the amount of heat, the swarms of bugs, I guess, coming.
More water, there's been more water bugs.
Maybe.
Water,
is it going to be that? How severe is it really going to be? Because people live in very hot places. People live with the sun beating down. You need to make changes, but there are people in the world right now who live that way. And so, how physically inclement is it going to be? Is it going to get?
Okay, so these are actually, you've made great points, and you're obviously a lot better than this New York City resident.
He was a schmuck.
I mean, he did, only concentrate on, he went straight into public health and then only considered elderly population, not really trying to, kind of implying there's no other way.
Important, but there's other things to focus on in relation to.
I mean, as a policy advisor for years.
To approach the information. And before going on to the next section, I would maybe like you to divide into two groups. I don't know how you want to
I'm not going to be in a group with him.
So maybe,
Me and him.
yeah, and you three. And
Yeah.
we've talked a lot, and we say, okay, human displacement, maybe if it's sudden, public health, well, the economy. What if you had to primarily concentrate on one of these? Just try. It's just the first attempt. Which one would you choose? And try to back up your decision with some arguments as well.
I honestly don't think that the displacement is so much of a direct issue. I mean, it's probably secondary.
They're actually probably going to come
happen.
more
Unless
other
the
concerns
Manhattan's
to
like
some
swamped
degree,
in like a day.
people
leave
I think
Manhattan,
we'll be able to deal with it.
suddenly, I mean, even if you're saying like, if the people in their high rises stay and they're fine,
So, like,
there are people who live elsewhere who will also
What
pull
happens
that.
when the one train?
So like, if there's no one running the deli on the
Right.
corner,
Yeah.
suddenly things are a little different. Like, we don't.
Then we have to take the.
If Manhattan
we get
turns
very,
into,
very
like,
confused.
A little island of the rich and powerful, they still need to pay for. Remember?
Like last week.
They still need to pay for people to come in and make them food and like make their socks and whatnot. We can't just abandon that. And it's also, I mean, so the more of life that's about immediate survival, the less of life is about,
Or like out
No,
from
the
the
rest of
central
life.
hub of
which is
Yeah.
it's a real serious loss, and I mean economically it's a real serious loss too, because just there's a huge amount of creative
I think
sort of
economically too,
foundation to it.
investment went down. So
Okay, so let's listen to two experts.
The ability to determine which of the three threats should be our primary focus is essentially the ability to manage information. As an experienced disaster preparedness consultant, I would answer this information management problem by using a three-step process. With the first step, we need to compare information. By listing and relating the effects of each threat, we need to begin to understand the scope of the problem at hand. Next, it's important to take into account factual relevance. This is the second step, contextualizing the information. While the first step helped us to compile the important facts needed when comparing these three threats, The contextualizing of information aids in parsing out irrelevant information while emphasizing the information that is most relevant. For example, information that is important for one area of the world may not apply to New York City policy. While I may be concerned about the effects of drought on public health in sub-Saharan Africa, I won't need to concern myself with that information when analyzing specifically the New York City policy situation, since New York City has no agricultural concerns itself. Thus, by contextualizing the information, I was able to evaluate the relevance of the facts. The third and final step is the prioritizing of information. By prioritizing the relevant facts derived from steps 1 and 2, we can determine which threat should be our primary concern. For example, if you believe the 3 threats are interrelated, it may be necessary to determine which one effect, if addressed, will best aid in addressing the other 2. So by prioritizing the relevant facts, we can begin ranking the threats in order of which most influences the other 2. So by following a 3-step model, comparing, contextualizing, and prioritizing, we can try and solve this information management problem.
Here we're talking about New York City, so when evaluating a particular effect like population displacement, we need to see if it is relevant, and if so, how relevant it is to New York City. So for example, we might want to look at least at New York's population, its location, and its infrastructure. A second point is that some climate change effects are very sudden, and others are more gradual. So we could imagine New York City being hit by a major hurricane, which would disrupt the New York Stock Exchange and have huge consequences on financial markets, not only in New York, but all over the world. But if you think about rising sea levels, that's a lot more gradual, which by the way does not mean that it's less important. For example, if we want to avoid population displacement, we may need to think about building seawalls around New York, or pumping systems to keep the city subways dry. And of course, that would have indirect economic impacts. If you think about the increase of temperatures, that's gradual too, and in that case, it could affect public health. Rising temperatures could increase heat-related deaths and its inborn diseases like malaria, because warmer cities are more habitable for mosquitoes. We need to evaluate what would be the increase of these deaths, which portion of the population would be at risk, whether or not we're ready to handle such effects in order to minimize the damage, and also can we assume that the health system of a developed city like New York is capable of handling such effects. So a lot of variables are coming into play when trying to evaluate something. It's not only about examining the facts, it's also about establishing their relevance according to other factors and how one would affect another. And only then can we compare and prioritize an issue. So you might think that you came up with some of these points already in our first discussion already, but I hope it did kind of help you to find your way through this challenge, and to help you guys actually talk about this challenge, we've come up with a few articles. So some of them are very long, so you just have to skim through. Others are quite short, just small paragraphs. You have maps, just maybe bullet points. So they're all, concern each one of those. So that would be human displacement, public health, economic impacts. So again, here, if we can stick to our 2 groups, and if you take some time to maybe go through the articles, read about them, maybe jot down some new facts, how they would influence one of these 3 categories. And basically some of them are really long, yeah. And that we're maybe going to spend 15 minutes here, max. There is a lot of stuff, so just try to, read some of it. If you're interested by others and not, some of them, not all of them, that's fine. But at the end of the 15 minutes, we really want to try to answer this challenge. So if you could come.